Hi, Samson.
Hello, good day.
Hi. Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What about you?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's nice to be here again.
Yeah, yeah. Even we are also everyone we are excited to have you. Yeah, it's good to have you again at Steva session. So yeah. So I think if you are ready, we can start the session. Or do you need any time?
Mm, I think we can start. I think we can start right away.
Cool. So welcome everyone. Welcome to this session on Let's Talk About Azure. And today we have with us Samson, who is Microsoft certified trainer, and he will be guiding us today about Azure and fundamentals. So I hope you all are excited to learn from him. So welcome, Samson. Welcome, welcome to this session.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Um, it's really nice to be here once again. And today's session, we're going to be. Sorry, I'm not going to introduce myself. Let me share my screen so that we can start. I think this is right. This is, okay. So, hello everyone. I am Samson Amaugo. I am a full stack developer at Microsoft MVP and MCT. So, in today's session, we're going to be looking at insights into AZ-104, meaning I just want to give a surface overview of some of the things that you need to get familiar with so I can sit for the AZ-104 exam. So the AZ-104 exam stands for the Azure Administrator Associate Exam. So it's it covers mostly managing managerial like tools, and that is governance in regards to Azure, and also how to set up some compute, virtual machine, and whatnot. We'll get right into it as we go by. So when sitting for the AZ-104 exam, some of the prerequisites that you should be familiar with is Azure Resource Manager. I'll touch some things, I'll not touch it because I can't really go through all these things today. I just want to like give a surface overview of what to learn in regards to the AZ-104 exam. So the prerequisite that you need to know before you sit for it, at least you should know how to use Azure Resource Manager. So when you're talking about Azure Resource Manager, things like Azure Resource Groups comes in, creating Azure Resource Manager logs, things like setting your Azure resource limits and quotas, stuff like that. So that is what comes here. But let me, all right, I think this is a better view. I think this is a better view. Yeah, so that is all for using Azure Resource Manager. Let me get this highlighter. This up then. So that's all for using this Azure Resource Manager. Then when you get into Azure Cloud Shell, Azure Cloud Shell is like an Azure integrated shell or terminal that you can use to interact with your Azure resources. You don't have to like set up lots of dependencies. You don't have to like download maybe an npm package to execute some npm commands. Most of all these default or popular tools are already built into the Azure Cloud Shell. So you have to at least be familiar with it. The other thing that you need to be familiar with is Bash. So you have to get familiar with Bash. And then PowerShell. PowerShell is Although PowerShell is currently cross-platform, but initially PowerShell was in Windows native shell. It only supported Windows. But now you can use PowerShell in both Linux and Windows. So the next thing that I have here is manage identity governance. So in terms of identity governance talks about, you know, who actually has access to resources. Does this person have a, should this person have an access to this resource? Should this person be given it permission to execute this command? Stuff like that. What group does this individual have? So that is all about managing identity governance. So there are different concepts here, like understanding Microsoft Entra ID. So Microsoft Entra ID is like the new name for Microsoft's Azure AD. That is Azure Active Directory. So Entra ID is like the new name for Active Directory. Then you should also be familiar with configuring users and groups accounts. You should be familiar with subscriptions, how to apply cost savings to your subscriptions. You should be familiar with cost management under subscriptions. Then another concept here is configuring Azure policy. So under Azure policy, this is where you like set some rules or guidelines in respect to your resources, the resources they are trying to set up. So under Azure policy, you can set up policy definitions. You can also set up initiative definitions. So you have to be familiar with all these things, both compliance and how to set them up. Then the other things here, like setting up role-based access control and how to reset passwords using Microsoft's Entra self-service password reset. Then the next thing we have here is we have managing virtual networks. And under managing virtual networks, you have to be familiar with subnets, how to set up subnets, how to define your IP address. You also have to be familiar with the network security group, which in short form is known as NSGs. So the network security group, you can see it as a container for different virtual IPs. So this container like defines rules. It's more of like a firewall that controls the inflow of traffic through your virtual machine, through your virtual networks, sorry. Then we have Azure Network Peerings. So Azure Virtual Network Peerings enables you to like connect two or more virtual networks together so that they can transmit data across each other. Then you also have to be familiar with Azure routing and endpoints, Azure load balancer, how to route traffic from a public IP to your workload machines. You should also be able to set up Azure Application Gateway. So you might ask yourself, if you're familiar with Azure Load Balancer and Azure Application Gateway, you might ask yourself, what is the difference? These two actually perform, they are quite similar. But the difference between the Azure Load Balancer and the Azure Application Gateway is that Load Balancer is designed to handle load balancing on layer 4 level, the IP level of the traffic, while the Azure Application Gateway does that on the layer 7 network layer. You can like route the URL of a particular workload machine or backend load machine. So that is like the main difference. The other differences, but I think that is the main one. Then you should also be familiar with hosting a domain name using Azure DNS. You should also be familiar with scaling and resiliency using Azure Load Balancer. Then the next thing I have here is I have implementing and managing storage in Azure. So in Azure, there are different ways to handle storage. You have to like familiar with creating a storage account. You should be familiar with using different storage services like Azure Blob, Azure Files, Azure Sync. You know how to set them up. Then you should also be familiar with how to set up control access using SAS. So SAS is an acronym for Shared Access Signatures. So you can use that to grant people access to your data, your stored file or blob in Azure storage. And you can set their access to be time constrained. Maybe you can say, I want this person to have access to this file for 2 hours, 3 hours, 2 days, 5 days. So that is where the shared access signature comes in. Then you should also be able to upload and download data on Azure Storage using Azure Storage Explorer. Then the next thing that I have here is deploying and managing Azure compute resources. So under this topic, you should be familiar with configuring the virtual machines. You should also be familiar with setting up virtual machine availability for higher availability of your services. You should also be familiar with Azure App Service plans, different plans, how to set up your Azure App Service on these plans. Then another concept you should be familiar with is Azure Container Instances. So you should be familiar with Azure Container Instances. So Azure Container Instances is it's a serverless service provided by Azure that enables you to like run containers, manage containers on Azure, usually for a short period of time. Then you should be able to like host a web application using Azure App Service. Then another concept here that you have to look into is monitoring and backing up of Azure resources. So the monitoring and backing up of Azure resources encapsulates mostly, having backups so that you won't lose your files in case a physical disaster occurs in the data center. The rest assured that your data is safe and you can also access it in case of these eventualities. Then you should also be able to configure virtual machine backups, backups in terms of snapshots, or let's say you want to like implement soft deletes, whereby when you delete something, it doesn't entirely get erased completely. It's stored for a particular period of time as a soft deleted data. Then you should also be familiar with Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor is like is a monitoring service offered by Azure that offers both logs, metrics, and tracing service. Offers some It offers a whole lot of analytics and monitoring of your services. It also offers some smart features that enable you to detect abnormalities in your services, and then send maybe a trigger warning to you telling you this was discovered, so check out this error, check out this possible error or issue. Then you should also be familiar with configuring network watchers. So with the network watcher, you can use it to troubleshoot your network, to see how packets are being transferred across your network layer, see how how your data is being hopped from one, maybe a virtual network appliance to the other. Then you should also be familiar with how to analyze your infrastructure by using Azure Monitor logs. If you're able to read logs, you're able to query it. So Azure Monitor uses a domain-specific language to query these logs, and the name of that language is called coastal queries. So it's coastal queries you can query your Azure monitor logs. Then you should also be able to monitor your Azure virtual machines with it. So these are the required things that you need to learn to sit for Azure AZ-104, the AZ-104 exam. So that is a lot. Wait, let me share my screen. So Azure 104. So this is where I got the resources to learn. So from this link, let me paste it on the group chat so that you guys can have access to it. No, I can't paste in. I can't paste in a link in the chat. Let me see. I'll just paste it in the question answer tab. Yeah, I think I can do that. So that is the link. Then once you scroll down, you see this area where they say practice assessment. So I'd advise and I also recommend that you take this practice assessment so that you can assess yourself based on all these parts, these learning pathways and modules. Then I would also advise, like most of these parts, learning parts, most of them, they have, let's, let me open it. Sorry. I'm sure of this one.
Samson, I have pasted the link in the chat box that you shared. So you can
Okay.
share it in the Q&A and I'll paste it. I don't know what's the issue, why there's a technical glitch, but I have pasted it.
Okay. Thank you. So most of these modules have an interactive lab simulation. So this interactive lab simulation gives you like a live simulation of how to achieve some of these tasks, how to maybe set up a virtual machine, set up a virtual network. And I advise and recommend that you go through the labs, try to finish all this, and don't just read this for the exam. I would advise you take the lab so that you can have a first-hand view of how to set up some of these services. Then apart from using this to assess yourself, there's also a popular site that you can use, which I use a lot. You can check out Examtropics. So the Examtropics, you should be able to, like see this one. This one for example. You can ask yourself, you can answer this question, attempt them. If you can't answer it, you can click on review solution and you'll see the voted answer. And if you want to maybe see more discussions based on the answer, you can click on discussion and you see people's conversations in respect or in regards to the answer. So that is all for getting started or getting prepared rather for your AZ-104 exam. I think it's a very practical certification because some of these things or most of the things you learn here, you should be able to apply them in real life situations, like setting up virtual machines, setting up the networking layer of the virtual machines, setting up role-based access controls for your users. Also trying to optimize costs. Like this is a very practical It's a very practical certification for Azure, and I think it's important for someone that wants to be a Microsoft Azure Administrator. So I am done. So in case you want to, this is a very short session. I just want to like cover because most of these things you can't really sit down in a single virtual workshop and go through all this. All these things took me, I think, a month. Although they wrote 2 hours here to take this first one, 3 hours, but finishing all this took me, I think, approximately a month to go through. I also had to like practice some aspects so that I could understand more what I read. So that is about it. Then, in case you want to reach me, you can connect with me on X, Swag Blooms. I also have a website called swagblooms.com. And on LinkedIn, you can connect with me using the handle Samson Amaugo. So thanks everyone. Thanks for hearing me. If you have any question in regards to the exam, feel free to ask. The floor is open.
So guys, in case you have any questions, feel free to ask Samson right now uh, regarding AZ-104, regarding anything else in Azure. Just feel free to ask. So you can ask the questions in the chat box or on the in the Q&A, and he will answer.
Okay. Uh, Seems like there's no question. Then one other thing, in terms of what the exams seemed like, so the multiple choice question and it's scenario based, so they'll like come up with, with different scenarios, like real life scenarios, and then based on that story that they narrated, you'll be asked questions in terms of what to do, what to use, what are the steps to do this. So there was no lab actually in the exam. It was more of a scenario-based multiple choice question. Then some of them had like this drag and drop stuff where you have to like specify the steps to achieve or accomplish a task, while some just select the answer to the question. So that is it.
So I guess there are no further questions, and we are good to go. So thank you so much. Thanks, Samson. Thanks for joining. Thanks for guiding us about AZ-104. And I hope everyone in this call passed this certification exam, and they, based on your insights, based on the tips that you share, uh, they passed this certification exam. I'm sure these tips that you share, they are very helpful, and they had a great learning experience today. I mean, everyone had a great learning experience today. So we are good to go. Thank you. Thanks. I'll for all those who are in the call. I'll share a attendance form. feedback form, and you have to fill that feedback form in order to get the certificate for today's sessions. So certificate of participation for today's session, and the recording for today's session will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, which is Teva YouTube channel. I'll share that link as well. And if you haven't joined our community, then make sure you join it. So thank you. Thanks, Samson. Thanks for taking out your time and guiding us today. We look forward to have you in the future as well.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. It's always a pleasure talking here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.